So today we're tackling a massive question, one that's right at the heart of a new global power struggle: Greenland. Is it a prize to be won, a pawn in a much bigger game, or is it a people with a future of their own? Because this giant icy island is no longer some forgotten place on the edge of the map. No, it's center stage now. And the answer to that question, well, it's going to shape the world for all of us. For centuries, the North has held this powerful, almost mythical place in our minds. Ancient texts, like this one from Jeremiah, warned of disaster pouring out from the North. It was seen as this place of incredible power, but also of terrible final judgment. And as you're about to see, that ancient idea is finding a strange and powerful echo right now, in the 21st century. But here's the thing: that old fear is being replaced by a very modern kind of ambition. As the ice melts, the world is looking north and asking a totally new question. It's not what disaster might come from the north anymore. It's who is going to control it. And that, right there, changes absolutely everything. All right, so let's get right into it. Let's break down exactly why this vast, frozen landscape has suddenly become one of the most strategic and potentially dangerous flashpoints on the entire planet. And at the absolute epicenter of this brewing storm is Greenland. It's not just the world's largest island, it's a treasure chest of untapped resources. And its location? It's like a gatekeeper for all the new sea lanes opening up in the Arctic. So really, it's no surprise that suddenly everyone wants a piece of it. Let's start with the player making the loudest and boldest moves right now: the United States. Something that once sounded like a crazy, off-the-wall real estate idea has now become a serious national security goal. So, what's fueling all of this? Well, it's this idea that some are calling Monroe Doctrine 2.0. Basically, it's a huge strategic pivot. For 75 years, America has been focused on Europe and the Atlantic Alliance. This new doctrine says, let's pull back and focus on locking down our own backyard, the entire Western Hemisphere, all the way up to the North Pole. So how could this actually happen? Well, analysts have mapped out a pretty clear ladder of escalation. It starts out friendly enough, right? A diplomatic offer to buy it. We've already seen that. But if that doesn't work, it could quickly ramp up to intense economic pressure, then a coercive ultimatum, which is basically a demand with a threat behind it, and then, in the most extreme case, something that was once unthinkable: actual military action. And this quote, man, it really gets to the heart of the whole thing. A lease or a treaty is not worth ownership, which is psychologically necessary. This tells you everything you need to know. It's not just about military bases or strategic positioning. It's about ownership. It's the mindset of a real estate tycoon who wants to acquire the ultimate piece of property. But of course, America isn't playing this game alone, not by a long shot. There are other superpowers with their eyes on the exact same prize. So let's turn to the other major players in this great game: China and Russia. So you have China, which has basically just declared itself a near-Arctic state. Now that's not just words. It's the whole basis for their Polar Silk Road, a massive plan to carve out new trade routes and lock down resources, all done in close partnership with Russia, who provides the military presence and, crucially, the icebreakers. And just look at these numbers. They really tell the story. The Northern Sea Route, the one that goes over the top of the world, can slash shipping time from Asia to Europe by up to 50%. That isn't a small improvement. That's a complete game changer. It saves a ton of time, a ton of fuel, and it lets you bypass all the risky bottlenecks like the Suez Canal. But, shipping is really only half the story here. The other half is what's under the ice. We're talking about rare earth elements. These are the minerals that are in literally everything from your smartphone to a fighter jet. And right now, as you can see, China completely dominates the game, controlling almost half of the entire world's reserve. And this is where Greenland comes back into the picture in a huge way. It's sitting on some of the largest untouched rare earth deposits on the entire planet. So for Washington, this isn't just about money. This is a strategic emergency. They see Greenland as the key to finally breaking China's chokehold on the supply chains that our entire modern world runs on. So you've got this three-way geopolitical chess match playing out. But here's the real twist: the thing that makes this situation so incredibly dangerous and, frankly, unprecedented. Two of the main players here, the United States and Denmark, well, they're supposed to be on the same team, and this whole situation is pushing the Western alliance to the absolute breaking point. You know, the whole idea behind NATO was built on this one simple, powerful principle. An attack on one is an attack on all. Article 5. It was designed to face outward, to deter threats like the old Soviet Union. But it was never, ever designed for a scenario like this one. What do you do when the threat isn't from the outside? What happens when the threat is coming from inside the house? And listen, the stakes just don't get any higher than this. The Danish Prime Minister has been absolutely crystal clear about it. She said that an American takeover of Greenland would, quote, effectively bring an end to NATO itself. We're talking about the end of the 75-year-old Western alliance. Just gone. So how could Europe possibly respond to this? Well, analysts basically see three paths forward. The first is a scenario of total inaction, what some are calling an Arctic Munich. In this version, Europe is just paralyzed. They're terrified of losing American support in places like Ukraine, so they do nothing. The US takes Greenland, and the alliance is shattered. Okay, this second option is more proactive. It's called the line of deterrence. Here, a coalition of European allies would send a small symbolic force to Greenland. Now, the goal wouldn't be to actually fight the US military. That would be insane. The goal would be to raise the political price of an American move so high that it becomes impossible to go through with it. And the final, most explosive scenario is what's being called the Suez moment. In this version, the US just decides to force the issue no matter what its allies think. And sure, they might win in the short term, they might secure Greenland, but it would be a catastrophic strategic loss. Their global reputation would be destroyed, and NATO would be over. It would be a win that's actually a massive, massive loss. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about great powers and grand strategy and geopolitical chessboards. But in all this talk, there's one voice that gets ignored way too often. What about the people who actually live there? What do the Greenlanders want? Let's find out. Look, we're talking about a population of just 57,000 people. But believe me, their voice has been incredibly loud and clear on this. You've had protests in the capital, Nuuk. You've had this incredibly rare moment of political unity where every single party in their parliament signed a statement condemning all this talk of annexation. And you have to understand, this isn't just about politics for them. It's personal. It's rooted in the historical trauma of the 1950s, when indigenous people were forcibly kicked off their land to make way for America's Thule Air Base. But, it's never quite that simple, is it? While they're all united against being taken over, their internal politics are incredibly complex. They are deeply divided on what their own future should actually look like. Do they go for a pro-business model, a more populist nationalist route, or one that's focused on protecting the environment above all else? And this right here, this is the impossible choice, the core dilemma that Greenland is facing. For many, the dream is full independence. But that dream is tied to a really harsh reality. Their economy depends on a massive annual subsidy from Denmark. We're talking over $500 million a year. So for Greenland, chasing the dream of independence could mean complete economic ruin. Which brings us right back to where we started. As the great powers of the world circle overhead, is this giant island just a prize on a chessboard? Is it a pawn ready to be sacrificed? Or is it a nation of 57,000 people whose right to choose their own path will ultimately decide the future of the Arctic? The answer to that question is going to define this new era we're entering, and it's a question we all need to be asking.